She looked at me across the room, her eyes sharp, guarded, like a storm had settled behind them. I barely recognized the woman I once thought I knew, the woman I had loved, trusted, and somehow lost. She said the words that would change everything between us. Divorce is freedom. Freedom. The word felt like a punch, not a promise. And yet, even as she said it, there was a flicker in her gaze, a hesitation she tried to hide. Something told me this freedom she craved might not be what she imagined. I still remember the way she used to laugh, the way her hand would brush against mine in quiet, ordinary moments. It all seemed so effortless once. But life has a way of twisting ordinary into unbearable, doesn't it? And somehow, we had arrived here. Faces hardened, hearts bruised, standing on opposite sides of a decision that neither of us fully understood yet. I wanted to ask her why. Why now? Why this? But the words stuck in my throat. Because deep down, I already feared the answer. I feared the truth that had been quietly growing between us, unnoticed until it became too loud to ignore. And as she spoke of freedom, I couldn't help but wonder if this freedom would really set her free, or if it would trap her somewhere even more dangerous, somewhere closer to me than she realized. It's strange how people can leave your life in one instant, and yet leave behind echoes that haunt you for years. I could feel her leaving before she even walked out the door. Every step she took felt heavier than the last, like the space between us was stretching, pulling at something fragile inside me that I didn't know I still had. And then she paused, glanced back over her shoulder, and for a moment, that stormy gaze softened, or was it regret? I couldn't tell. But whatever it was, it made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't felt in years. I wanted to run after her, to tell her everything I'd never said. But I stayed frozen, watching her disappear into the night, carrying her freedom like a torch I couldn't reach. And yet, something told me this wasn't the end. Freedom isn't always what it seems. Sometimes it's a door that leads straight back to where you started. I didn't know it then, but that night marked the beginning of something I could never have predicted. Something that would test everything I thought I knew about love, about loss, and about the dangerous power of a heart that refuses to let go. She thought leaving would break the chain between us, but freedom has a way of circling back. And when it does, there's no telling whether it will bring salvation or chaos. And just as the door clicked shut behind her, I felt it, a quiet, impossible certainty that our story wasn't finished. In fact, it was only beginning. Before that night, life had felt predictable, not always perfect, but steady in a way that made you forget how fragile everything could be. She, Amara, was always the kind of woman who carried herself with quiet confidence, even when her heart was heavy. At 44, she had this rare mix of strength and vulnerability that drew people in, and maybe that's why I fell so hard. I was 28, younger, reckless in ways she wasn't, yet somehow we fit, or at least, we had fit. We met at a cafe she used to frequent. I noticed her immediately. The way she'd tuck her hair behind her ear, the faint crease between her brows when she was thinking. There was a softness there, under a surface so polished it seemed untouchable. I started visiting more often, pretending it was about the coffee. But really it was her. And she noticed me too, eventually, in those quiet moments that felt like they belonged only to us. Our connection didn't explode, it crept up. Texts that lingered too long, glances that lasted too long, laughs that made the world feel smaller for a while. But life has a way of complicating even the simplest happiness. Amara was married then, to a man who didn't see her the way I did. A man who didn't notice the little cracks in her smile, the quiet sigh she tried to hide. And I wasn't supposed to notice either. But I did. Over time, boundaries blurred. Not all at once, but like water wearing down stone, quietly, invisibly. She began confiding in me, about late nights at work, arguments at home, the loneliness she thought she'd gotten used to. And I listened, always listened. It felt like I was holding pieces of her that no one else could reach. And when she finally said, "I can't do this anymore," I understood what she meant long before the words came. Divorce. The word hung in the air between us like a storm cloud, heavy and inevitable. She spoke of freedom, as if it were a destination she'd been planning for years. And yet, there was a hesitancy in her tone, a shadow she couldn't hide. It made me wonder, was she running towards something or running from something else entirely? I'd never thought of myself as the kind of man who waits. But with her, patience wasn't just necessary, it was survival. Because every glance, every unspoken word, every moment we shared carried the weight of a future we weren't supposed to have. And that night, when she walked away claiming freedom, it wasn't just her leaving me behind. It was stepping into a life she didn't yet understand. The truth is, freedom can be dangerous. It promises clarity, yet it can blind you to what's been right in front of you all along. And I had a feeling, a quiet certainty, that her freedom wouldn't last. That what she was running from might eventually lead her back to me. But I couldn't know that yet. Not tonight. All I could do was watch the door close and wait, knowing that the calm before the storm was only temporary. The days after she left were strange, quiet in a way that felt wrong. Her absence was loud, echoing in every corner of my apartment, in every message I didn't receive, in every call I didn't hear. I kept telling myself she needed this, that freedom meant space, that I had no right to interfere. But the truth was, every fiber of me ached to reach out, to pull her back before the world convinced her she didn't need me anymore. And yet, when I tried to imagine her life without me, it felt incomplete. She had built walls around herself over years of disappointment, but those walls had cracks, tiny, fragile cracks, and I had once seen them. Those cracks whispered a secret I wasn't ready to ignore. She hadn't actually wanted freedom. She wanted someone to see her, to fight for her, to understand the chaos inside her. But she didn't tell me that. She didn't say the words, didn't leave clues. I only had the little things, the photos she accidentally left behind, the text that lingered unsent, the memories that refused to fade. And each one pulled me deeper into a question I couldn't answer. Had I lost her because I didn't act fast enough, or because I'd waited too long to let her go? Then came the messages. Random, brief, almost casual, as if she were testing the waters, testing me. Hope you're well, one read. Another, a single emoji, a storm cloud. Confusing. Frustrating. Every word felt like a trap, every silence a punishment. I wanted to call, to knock on her door, to scream the truth. That freedom alone couldn't save her from herself. But fear held me back. Fear that I'd push her further away. And somewhere in that fear, a new tension began to form. I realized that the more I waited, the more precarious everything became. Because freedom isn't just a gift, it's a choice. And if she chose the wrong path, I might never get a chance to guide her back. One evening, I saw her. From across the street, illuminated by the soft glow of a street lamp, her silhouette paused, hesitant, like she didn't know where she belonged. My heart slammed against my ribs. Should I go to her? Could I? Or would one wrong step shatter everything I'd been silently holding on to? She turned slightly, as if sensing me, and for a moment, time froze. And then she walked on, away from me, yet not entirely. I didn't know it yet, but that moment was the beginning of a dangerous game neither of us were ready to play, and one that would change us both forever. The days blurred into nights, each one heavier than the last. Every time I thought I understood her, what she wanted, what she needed, she slipped further away, like smoke through my fingers. I started noticing things, the faint tremor in her texts, the hesitation in her voice when she called, the way she lingered too long at familiar places before moving on. It was as if she were searching for something, or maybe running from it, and I didn't know which. I followed her from a distance one evening, careful not to be seen. It felt wrong, stalkerish, but my gut told me she was in danger. Not physical danger. Something far more subtle, far more consuming. Emotional danger. The kind that could destroy her even as she convinced herself she was finally free. She stopped outside a small, dimly lit cafe. The kind with cracked leather chairs and a faint smell of coffee that could almost feel like home. I watched her through the window, half hoping she would see me and half hoping she wouldn't. She slid into a booth and pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen like she was about to write something she didn't dare send. Her face was a mixture of longing and fear, the war within her written across every line. And then she looked up, straight at me. My heart jumped. Our eyes locked for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, the world narrowed down to just us. There was recognition there, a spark I couldn't name, but also a warning. She wasn't ready to return, not yet. But something about her hesitation, the way she swallowed her next words, made it clear that the pull between us was growing stronger by the hour. I wanted to cross the street, to walk through the door and finally tell her everything I'd been holding inside. But something stopped me, a subtle unease that whispered, wait, not yet, because freedom had changed her, or at least made her question herself. And when people question themselves, they can do things they never imagined, dangerous things. Hours later, I found myself at my apartment, replaying the moment over and over in my mind. Her eyes, that flicker of fear or desire, or maybe both. I couldn't tell. And that was the worst part. The uncertainty, the sense that whatever decision she made next would shift everything. For both of us. Then, just as I was about to give in to despair, my phone buzzed. A message from her. Not a text, not a call, just a location pinned on a map. A place I had never been before. My chest tightened as I stared at it. What was she planning? Why now? And most importantly, was this a trap or a chance to finally bring her back? I didn't know it yet, but the answer to that question would change everything. And the moment I stepped into the unknown, there would be no turning back. I followed the pin on my phone to a small, almost hidden loft on the edge of the city. My heart raced with a mix of hope and dread. I knocked, my hand shaking. The door creaked open, and I froze. It wasn't just Amara waiting inside. There was someone else. A man I didn't recognize. Tall, imposing, with a quiet menace that made the room feel smaller, tighter, suffocating. And the way Amara looked at him, it wasn't fear. It wasn't love. It was something else entirely. Something that made my stomach twist. "You're here," she said softly, almost regretfully. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to him. I didn't want it to end like this. I wanted to demand answers, to shove past him and grab her, to scream and fight, but I couldn't. Because in that instant, I realized something terrifying. Her freedom hadn't been about leaving me at all. It had been about finding something, or someone I couldn't compete with. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about her, about us, shifted. I stepped closer, desperate, and she whispered a single sentence that made my blood run cold. "I thought I could choose, but I think you've always been the only one I could never escape." I froze in the doorway, heart pounding so loudly I thought it might give me away. Amara stood between me and the stranger, her hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of a choice she hadn't fully made yet. "You don't understand," I whispered, stepping closer, my voice raw. "This isn't about freedom. It's about us. Always has been." Her eyes softened for a fraction of a second, the flicker of the woman I had loved peeking through. But then the stranger spoke, his voice low and steady. "She belongs to no one. Not you. Not me. Not anyone." Something inside me snapped. I realized then that I had spent so long waiting, so long holding back, that I had forgotten one crucial thing. I couldn't fight for her with words alone. I had to fight with my presence, my heart, my everything. I reached for her hand. Her fingers hesitated, brushing mine. That brief contact was enough. In that instant, the world outside the loft didn't exist. There was no city, no strangers, no past mistakes. Just her and me, two hearts tangled in a storm we couldn't escape. "I don't want freedom," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I want you. I always have." The stranger stepped back, a silent acknowledgement that this was no longer his battle. And for the first time in weeks, the tension between us seemed to ease, replaced by a fragile, tentative hope. We held each other there, the storm of emotions finally finding its center. I thought the story had reached its end, that the conflict had resolved itself in that one perfect, impossible moment. But then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face paled. "Who is it?" I asked, unease crawling up my spine. She didn't answer. Instead, she handed me the phone, and I saw the message. My blood ran cold. It was from someone we both thought was gone, someone who shouldn't exist in our lives anymore. And the text was simple, terrifyingly simple. "I'm coming back. And this time, I won't let either of you escape." We didn't speak for a long time after that message. The loft felt impossibly quiet, as if the world itself had been holding its breath. I held Amara's hand tightly, as though letting go would undo everything we had fought to reclaim. She leaned into me, her forehead resting against my shoulder, and I could feel the steady rise and fall of her chest. It was a simple, human rhythm, but it was enough to remind me that despite all the chaos, we were still here. Together, we talked for hours, not about the past, not about the stranger, not about the message. We talked about us, small things, silly things, The little moments we'd missed while the world pulled us apart. Laughter came back, fragile at first, then stronger. Tears followed, not just from pain, but from relief, from the quiet understanding that love sometimes survives because it refuses to die quietly. In the days that followed, we rebuilt. Not a perfect life, far from it, but a life chosen deliberately, with full awareness of the fragility and beauty of what we had. Amara went back to work, but I could see her smile more often now. We cooked together, walked through the city streets holding hands, argued over nonsense, and made up just as quickly. The freedom she had once sought turned out to be something simpler, something quieter, the freedom to choose love without fear. The message still lingered in the back of my mind, like a shadow we couldn't ignore. We didn't know who it was from, only that it was a reminder that life rarely unfolds neatly. But instead of letting it dominate us, we let it sharpen our awareness of what truly mattered, the fragile, messy, human bond we'd fought to protect. That night, as we sat together on the rooftop of our apartment building, looking at the city lights stretching endlessly before us, I realized something profound. Life doesn't offer guarantees. People leave, hearts break, circumstances shift, but love, when it's real, finds a way. It circles back, even when you think the door has closed forever. And sometimes, the very thing you thought was freedom is just the path that leads you back home. Amara rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt the weight of all the fear, all the uncertainty, lift just a little. "We made it," she whispered. And for once, I believed her. But in the quiet of the night, with the city asleep around us, I knew one thing for certain. Life would continue throwing unexpected twists our way. We couldn't control them, we couldn't predict them, but we could face them together. That was enough. That was everything. And as the wind brushed against our faces, carrying the faint hum of the world below, I smiled. Because no matter what came next, we had each other. And sometimes, that was the only freedom worth fighting for.